Welcome to our lesson on evidence for evolution, fossils and extinction. The key questions for today are: what evidence is there for the theory of evolution? How are fossils formed? What can we find out from fossils? What is extinction? What can cause a species to go extinct? The key words you will need to know are evolution, natural selection, fossils, evidence, extinction. We have already learnt about evolution and natural selection. Today we will examine some of the evidence that has led to this theory becoming more widely accepted. Task: what is evolution? Evolution is the gradual change seen in a species over many generations and due to selection pressures such as changes in the environment. Charles Darwin proposed that these changes occurred due to a process called natural selection, where there is variation within a species. Some are better adapted for survival than others, and they live longer and breed more, so have more chance of passing on their genes. Extension. Why was Darwin's theory rejected initially? Darwin's theory went against the teachings of the church, and many people were very religious. There was also a lack of evidence, and other scientists did not support Darwin's theory. Scientists did not have the knowledge of genes and DNA that they do today, and Darwin's theory lacked any real evidence that he had not collected himself. However, as other scientists began to look into Darwin's work, they began to validate his theories. The theory of evolution by natural selection is now widely accepted. This is largely because there is now evidence available to back up Darwin's claims. This evidence first came about in the form of the fossil record, and then our increased understanding of genetics. The evolution of antibiotic resistance bacteria also provides evidence, as bacteria reproduce at a much faster rate than other organisms, so it is observable as the time frame is shorter. Let's first look at fossils. Fossils are the preserved remains of organisms from up to millions of years ago. They can be formed from parts of organisms that have not decayed due to being trapped in ice or amber. This means that the oxygen or warm temperatures were not present, so the organism or part of it did not decay, so remained perfectly preserved. These fossils are the most useful to scientists as all parts of the organism remain intact. These fossils are very rare and are only found in certain parts of the world. The more common types of fossils are those where the hard parts of the organism become mineralized, so they form rocks that show the shape of the organism's shell, exoskeleton or bones. These fossils can provide scientists with lots of information, but are not as useful as the perfectly preserved remains, as the soft parts of the organisms would decay away. Another type of fossil is a preserved trace of an organism, such as a footprint, rootlet traces, or even burrows and holes. These are formed as mud hardens and fills with water, depositing minerals that then harden to rock. Task: evaluate how useful each type of fossil could be for scientists. All fossils are useful because they can provide information about when organisms were alive. This can be found out through analysing the rock that the fossil was found in. The older the rock, the deeper down into the earth it would be, so older fossils are generally found deeper in the earth. However, it is through geological activity and weathering that even very old fossils can be brought up to the surface. This is why it is more accurate to analyse the rock. Fossils that are perfectly preserved remains can provide lots of information, not just physical characteristics, but also samples from the organism's digestive system, blood, even DNA can be extracted. Trace fossils can tell scientists a lot about the behaviour of organisms. such as where they lived or how far they travelled. Fossil formation begins when an organism dies. The organism falls to the seabed and is covered in mud and silt that builds up as sediment. The soft parts of the organism decays, leaving the hard parts. The sediment layers build up and the lower layers become sedimentary rock, and as water seeps through, the hard parts of the organism become mineralized. Mineralization occurs when the bones dissolve and are replaced by the minerals carried in the water. The fossil then remains in the rock until geological activity or weathering and erosion brings it to the surface. The fossils are then excavated and studied. The fossil record is when the fossils are grouped and put into order. The age of the fossil can be estimated using analysis of the rock and by using the idea that the deeper layers of undisturbed rock are the oldest. Task: look at the picture. The letters represent where fossils of different organisms were found. Would organism R have lived earlier or later than organism P? Organism R would have lived earlier than organism P because its fossil was in a deeper layer of rock that would have formed before the rock that contains fossil P. The picture of the evolution of the modern horse. You can see the hooves have changed over time. This would be because the environment that they lived in would have changed over time too, and the features that were advantageous to the horse would have been naturally selected for. This provides evidence of evolution. The fossil record shows how organisms have changed over time. It also shows similarities between species and allows them to be traced back to common ancestors, strengthening the evidence for Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection. Extension. What are the limitations of the fossil record? The fossil record is the documentation of all the fossils that have been discovered. Some fossils have not yet been found, and some would have been destroyed by geological processes. This means that parts of the record could be missing. Also, soft-bodied organisms would not have formed fossils, and fossils would not always form of those with hard parts, as the conditions may not be right. For example, if an organism died on land, then the layers of silt and sediment would not build up, and then a fossil would not be formed. Fossils are only found in sedimentary rock, as once the rock changes to a different type, the fossils would be destroyed. The fossil record also shows us organisms that no longer exist. When all of the members of species have died out, the species is said to be extinct. Task: list some reasons why you think a species may become extinct. Species may become extinct due to physical and biological factors. Physical factors include natural disasters such as earthquakes and volcanoes, as well as asteroid collisions and changes in temperature. Biological factors include competition from other species, diseases and predators, and loss of habitat.